Tawhid tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator. He created a universe. He created a human being in his own right. Human beings are not a product of a process of trial and error, not a process of mutations, evolution, but by design and purpose they have been created. Similarly, Tawhid tells us that human beings are not just a form of developed animal life, but human beings are created with a mission and purpose. And their mission and purpose is to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth, not as a punishment, but as a duty and requirement. And they have to make sure that on this earth, no injustice, no exploitation, no lawlessness exists, and truth, fairness, honesty, the peace prevails. Therefore, my opening statement was that Tawheed is a liberating force which liberates human mind and soul and culture and society from all those constructs which have been made by many religions, cultures, and people. What does the Quran tell us about it? The Quran tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one and only. In other words, He is unique. He is the most powerful, the most knowledgeable, the most loving, the most kind and generous, the one who takes care of not only human beings, but even the smallest possible germ in the depth of soil or in the height of mountains. Therefore, Islamic understanding of creator is not one who just created and then retired, which is a school of thought. People think universe is working mechanically after a push. Original push was done and then it's working. Secondly, it tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a human being from one single soul, which means it's a liberation from anthropological approach of human understanding, and it provides a new approach of anthropology. Here, human being is created in his own right as Allah's Khalifa. It tells us that human being was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not by himself, although from one nafs, but at the same time, for this nafs, while human being was created, a mate was made from same nafs, which means a new sociology, a new concept of family, a new concept of linked together under certain ethical rules and principles. And similarly, the Quran tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate ruler, Malik, Hakim, and Judge, and Lord of universe, Rabb of universe, which means that He carries in Himself all those powers which are claimed by people on earth as kings, rulers, legislatures, and so on and so forth. Therefore, Tawheed is a liberating force from all those concepts which exist in the minds of human beings. Let's see how it comes in the context of Arabia. In Arabia, Arabian tribes were mostly monotheistic. The Quran tells us when you are traveling and you are facing very rough oceans, seas, whom do you call? You call Allah. But they thought that Allah needs some associates. These associates for them were persons who recommend their request to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, the main problem of pre-Islamic Arabia was shirk. Their shirk linked with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's monotheism. He believed in Allah, but at the same time they thought many others convey their desires to him. They are interceders. Intercession means when someone is in between trying to convey our desires to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The modern shirk which we encounter is not stone-made idols, not some fetish, but those ideologies which we assume that we are living in the age of capitalism. We are living in the age of scientism. We are living in an age where everything is done by technology. Technology assumes the role of facilitator. Just push button can cause atomic blast. A push button can cause release of viruses, biological warfare, and so on and so forth. And all that is considered as authority, as power, as something to be appreciated, not only appreciated, but worshipped. The mindset which is created by modern education is that the more you know about big data, the more you are powerful, because information is power, authority. And big data mining is what is to be done. That gives you authority. The new gods are no different than old gods. Therefore, when we say Tawhid is liberating force, it means that it liberates human beings from many inhibitions, many of the social constructs, and many of the ideologies which are predominant. The whole concept of scientism introduced by Auguste Comte, where he said that human history can be looked into from three perspectives. The age of mythology, which for him was age of Christianity or religion. The age of speculation, which was the age of philosophy of Greek thought or Renaissance. And then he said, now we are in the age of positivism, scientism, empiricism. Now everything empirically verifiable and measurable is true. And all these aspects tell us what's our worldview. Someone who believes in empiricism believes in empirical reality of mountains, clouds, water, and chemicals. And based on that, he or she builds his worldview, nothing beyond. Since matters that are addressed in most of world religions are not in the realm of empiricism, no one says we see our God sitting on a throne. Although in Judaism we find Elohim came down and in human form, but normally religions claim that they have belief in a being which is not physically verifiable. In other words, scientism begins with the claim that only that exists empirically is real and all else is a story. Therefore, it rejected Christian concepts completely in Europe and gave rise to a wave of atheism and secularity. Islamic concept of Tawhid tells us that there is no concept of secularity, because secularity means division of time and space in two domains. One is domain of sacredness Other is domain of profanity. When I'm in parliament, it's a worldly secular activity. When I'm in masjid or synagogue or temple, religious activity. And quite often, Muslims also believe in that. They think if they are making their 5-time prayers regularly in a masjid or surah, then they are doing their religion. But when they are sitting in parliament, when sitting in a stock market, when sitting in a factory, when chairing a meeting of senate of a university, then only Robert's rules are ultimate truth. Then only entrepreneurial benefit is what counts in market. How I as entrepreneur, as a capitalist, make more money. Doing this to many Muslims is doing worldly business. But at the same time, when they go to masjid, they think now they are doing something very sacred. Therefore, they must make wudu, they must make sure their dress is clean, they must be humble. But the same person who is bowing down in masjid, when he's sitting as president or prime minister of a country, or taking a guard of honor, then this person acts like a pharaoh and thinks he is something. This is the concept of secularity. Secularity means when we have this division in life. Tawhid means unization. Tawhid means that whatever you are supposed to do in masjid, in temple, in church, you must bring the same creator back in your home, in your entertainment, in your economy, in your political life, in your family life, in your social life, and find out how does this creator want me to behave in my family matters. Tawheed becomes a behavioral application. Therefore, I said in the beginning, it's a transformatory, revolutionary concept that transforms the whole vision of life. When I look from Tawhidic viewpoint in what I'm teaching in sociology, then I have to think, does it make sense? On Friday, I say, Allah, you are great. But in my class of sociology, I say that all ethical norms and morality is based on social evolution. Whatever society agrees is good, what they agree is bad. Which means when we are saying what should we wear in an office, a sleeveless shirt, a Bermuda, a full dress, all that is based on culture, on people, on their consensus. If this is the meaning of society and social constructs and culture and what I teach in my classroom, then am I teaching Tawhidic sociology or a sociology which is based on local customs and culture? When I say that let all blacks unite, is it based on ethics and morality or based on pure ethnicism and racism? When I say that whites are superior intelligence, and you have on that research is done in America and elsewhere. When we say that Jewish mind is more intelligent than other minds, then all these aspects are based on those assumptions which are given to me and you by sociology, anthropology, evolutionary thought, biological thinking. And all these disciplines, when they are taught with this worldview, which is based on what Auguste Comte said as scientism, empiricism of John Stuart Mill, and so many others. Therefore, when we say Tawheed is a liberating force, it means that a person who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to think, what kind of language I am using? Is it a polite language? The Quran tells us, even when you are approaching a pharaoh, فَقُولُوا قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا, then even talk with him in a polite manner. When we are wearing a dress, Then the Quran says, Libasu taqwa, which means dress which is reflective of simplicity, of humbleness, of providing me protection, but not unveiling my body, not showing off, not having arrogance, not having pride. And similarly, when I'm making legislation in parliament, then is it the majority vote that decides everything? If 51% people declare that we should have only women as combat flyers in Air Force, then does that make sense because of democratic decision, or there has to be a different principle? Is it a Tawhidic decision? When we decide in parliament that we want to decrease rate of interest so we can give boost to economy, then is decrease or increase of rate of interest in my hand, or it has to be considered based on the principles given by the Quran and Sunnah? And the Quran says very clearly, Allah al-bay'a wa harrama riba. Therefore, what will be the economy? What will be political system? When we say their ruler or king is immune, while even the Prophet ﷺ did not claim he was immune. He asked people during my career, if I was unfair to anyone or harmed anyone, then please come forward. And someone said, when you were in a ghazwa making a line, then with your stick you touched my body, and that was a harm to me. Then he offered himself, okay, this is the stick, use it on my body. That means no one is immune. King or prime minister is not supposed to appear in law court. Why? Because we are slave to traditions, to culture, to traditions in a society. When a culture becomes our God, it is a new form of shirk. When culture says that nothing wrong in a mixed gathering where people are sitting next to each other, rubbing their bodies, male and female, because it's our culture. While the Quran and Sunnah tell us that you should not touch the body of a stranger. What is the basis? Therefore, Tawheed means not a theology, not a matter of we believe in one God, which is monotheism. As I said earlier, monotheism is an arithmetic concept, not a matter of what the Quran tells us. On the other hand, it's a revolutionary concept which transforms everything. Consequently, its impact is on personal life. A person who till yesterday was a Pakistani, a Malay, a Turkish, a Sudanese, when he becomes a Muslim and says there is no God but Allah, then he denounces the God of nationalism, denounces the God of language, denounces the God of ethnicity, denounces the God of color. And having renounced all those gods, he says, my passport, my identity, my personality is only one. And that is, I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He becomes Tawhidic. He becomes servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He pledges not to serve color nationalism, linguistic nationalism, or territorial nationalism. No territory remains his territory. Now he is a world citizen because Tawheed has liberated him from his so-called micro-identity of belonging to a country and a soil. There is no concept of soil in Islam. Islam is universalism, not local soil. Islam came to Islamize the Arabs and not to Arabize the world. Therefore, those who, out of simplicity, as soon as they think they embrace Islam, coming from a different tradition or culture, they start immediately adopting all those things which they find some countries that claim to be Arabic speaking countries doing. It's not a matter of your faith, which is linked with soil. Islam was not, excuse me, a product of Makkah, but Makkah was a gift of Islam. Islam made Makkah center, not that Makkah made Islam center. Therefore, the whole concept of Muslims and non-Muslims about God has to be looked differently. And that's what brings a change. When you have this Tawhidic concept, then your political ideas change. You no more remain a member of a political party which is based on ethnicity, based on language, based on soil. The whole concept of son of soil is a totally concept based on shirk, because then we are going to include the God of land with the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is creator of land. He created land and skies and oceans. How can the creator be mixed with his creation? It's a contradiction. Therefore, Tawhidic understanding means a revolutionary concept, and those who accept that and embrace that transform their whole thinking processes, their view of culture, their view of language, their view of political power and authority, their view of political parties. A political party which claims to be representing a interpretation of Islam. Say, for example, those who call themselves Salafi. What does Salaf mean? Salaf means what we saw our forefathers doing. But seeing forefather doing a thing makes that legitimate? Or if forefathers are doing what Allah wanted, that makes it legitimate. Therefore, even political parties' names, their understanding, everything goes through a transformatory process when we start discovering the dimensions of Tawheed. As I said, it's not a theology. It's not some metaphysical concept, but it's a basically applied behavioral teaching principle that brings change in behavior, that brings change in what should I listen, what should I see, what should I speak. Once I say I believe in Tawheed, I have no more liberty to listen to what Allah does not like. I cannot listen to those songs which absorb me to the extent of missing my prayer. I cannot see those movies which keep me absorbed and I have no idea about what's happening to people who are oppressed in many parts of the world. I cannot just keep on enjoying food without understanding those children who have nothing to eat and nothing to survive. Tawheed means that I liberate myself from these bondages, these confinements, these shackles, these limitations of human self and mind. When we are able to transcend it, then we are entering Islamic understanding of Tawheed. Let me summarize the whole discussion. When we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is transcendent in Islam, which is said very clearly in Al-Ikhlas, then it means that He transcends in His knowledge, in His power, in His authority, in His creativity, in His sustaining the whole universe. No one can sustain and take care as He can. When we say He is our Lord, then we are saying that no World Bank, no IMF, no WHO can save lives of people. It's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who can save a person's life. A medical doctor can declare a person medically fit, but the moment the person walks out one step from the office, may collapse and die, because medical doctor cannot predict what will happen after that. Therefore, when you say he is Rabb or Lord, then he alone does not mean we don't take care of health, does not mean don't take care of cleanliness, does not mean take care of economic development. No, all those things are to be done, because the Creator tells us, you are my Khalifa, you are my vicegerent, you are my deputy, and you are supposed to create a society of adl, of justice, of love, of peace, of honesty, of fairness. And as such, human being is actor. He has to act. He has to bring change, but change which the Creator wants. When we say Tawhid, it means that all these aspects which are interlinked, they are not separate. One and only being with over 90 attributes, and each attribute excels. Each attributes take care of all those aspects for which we create our own gods and goddesses. It's in this sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a term, even cannot be translated as God, because God carries a concept of Godhead. God carries a concept of gender. You have gods and goddesses, but there is no such concept with the word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Tawheed refers to Tawheed of Zat and Sifat, Tawheed of person and attributes, and these attributes are essentially a matter of their application in human life. Therefore, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives, then He expects His servants to be forgiving. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is kind, He expects His servants to be kind among themselves. If He is all the time taking care, then He expects His servants will take care of others. That's why in Hadith Qudsi, you find it said, in the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask a person, I was hungry, you did not feed me. I was thirsty, you did not give me water. And the person will say, how come? You are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how could you be hungry? And he will say, a servant of mine asks you for food. If you were to feed him, you will find besides him your reward. If you give him a sip of water, you will find beside him your reward or your Rabb. Therefore, Huququl Ibad and Huququllah all put together give us a comprehensive concept of Tawheed, in which a believer is not supposed to be just praying 5 times a day, but translating this Tawheed in his actual life, political life, social life, economic life, personal life, cultural life, in every area. It has to be fully translated. I'm available for any questions you have, please.
We have several questions today. First question is from Salman Akram. Question is, democracy can be challenging the concept of Tawheed, but most of the Islamic parties are involved in democracy. So,
democracy does not have one single form. Even in Europe, it has several forms. French, British, German, all three have different forms of democracy, and American is completely different. What we mean is, when we call something Islamic democracy, then it means authority is not people's power. Authority is Sharia. In Pakistan's constitution, it is said that state will act and legislate only in those areas where Allah's sovereignty is maintained. parliament cannot make any act contrary to Quran and Sunnah. And that makes that democracy Islamic. Democracy can be Islamized based on Quranic principles. When those principles are considered, then an Islamic party or any party, even a non-Islamic party, can adopt Islamic principles which are more fair than the so-called Western secular democracy.
Okay, next question is from Brother Mushtaq Ahmad. In between the sacred abd profane, as we have been forced to believe, what does a dunyavi action mean?
Actually, there is no concept of separation between deen and dunya in the Quran and Sunnah. The Quran says, ask for hasanat in dunya and akhirah. The Quran says, enter in Islam, udkhulu fi silmi kaffa. Does not say enter in Islam in masjid, but leave the parliament for Robert's rules. Similarly, when you are in battlefield, you are not acting viciously, brutally, but you are acting based on ethical principles given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even warfare is Islamized, given Islamic ethical principles, that you, even when you are going to kill an animal, the hadith says, kill the animal with sharpest object, which means although you are killing the animal, but don't tease, don't torture. Therefore, everything in Islam is within one domain. The Prophet ﷺ in a hadith says, this whole of earth has been made masjid for me. The literal meaning will be that whether you are in a desert, there is sand, you are in a green area, lush green with grass, you are in a boat where you have the surface all with wood or steel, you can pray on any surface. This is the literal meaning. But what's the implication? Implication is, if the whole of earth is mosque, then where is the place for secularity? Then it means everything on earth to be done is sacred. Therefore, there is no such concept of division or dualism. The problem of modern man and mind is this duality. This duality exists in every single culture, Greek, Italian, French, German, American, any culture. It exists in many world religions, in Hinduism, in Christianity, and Judaism. It's only Islam where there is no room for this separation. Everything, the act of giving a piece of bread in the mouth of your child or your wife or your parents is an act of worship. Going to your wife, which is considered something very, very worldly, something which deals with just bodily pleasure, is not bodily pleasure. This is a part of ibadah. A person could have same situation outside wedlock, but he did it in wedlock because Allah wants it. Therefore, his living together Islamized, ethicalized. So there is no such concept of division between these two things, or a realm of secularity and holiness, or spirituality, and the other is of materiality.
Okay, next question is from Brother Ashfaq Rahman. What is the philosophy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make shaitan so powerful?
The philosophy is very simple. When we find Sayyidina Adam being made from dust, and then he is given some knowledge, and he is told that there is someone aduvum mubin, a very, very visible, evident enemy of yours. This enemy of yours is supposed to tempt, detract, and try to invite towards wrong. The philosophy is very simple. Human being was created with ethical judgment, power to decide, should I go near the tree or not go near tree? Therefore, the very first act of Sayyidina Adam going to tree was act of exercise of freedom of the will. And when he made a wrong judgment and realized, he returned to Allah. The Quran says he returned to Allah. He was a munib, anibu ilallah. When he returned to Allah, Allah taught him those words that we have done something wrong on us, we did zulm on us. And therefore, if you do not forgive us, we'll be destroyed. And Allah accepted. Therefore, his descent was not a punishment as we find in Christianity and Judaism. But the purpose of creation was this freedom of will. Now, if freedom of will was the purpose, how could this freedom be exercised without shaitan? Angels don't have this liberty. Angels cannot renounce, cannot act otherwise. Human being was created for this purpose of exercise of freedom of the will, and therefore shaitan was a necessity to test human beings. The Quran says again and again, I will test you with the shortage of food, with the life and death, naqs al-amwal, was-samarat, and whoever are going to be successful will be rewarded. Therefore, it's very, very simple and clear in the Quran. And I always advise my friends that do not ask individuals. You go to Quran and ask the Quran for the answer. Whatever I'm telling you is not what I am telling you. It's what the Quran tells me. That this is the reason, and that's why shaitan was created.
Next two questions from Asri Asrina and Wahida. Tawhid is a very important foundation in life. How to understand it for most people who are not sure of the unseen or ghaib, or children who do not know God? How can we teach Tawhid to our children in this era? What first step should we teach them?
I think a very generous saying that how should we teach our children? I think those who claim to be adults are equally in the same boat. And we need to address both with what the Quran tells us. The Quran tells us that look around. You see a shower every evening, as quite often in Malaysia you find in the evening a shower is seen by people. Who is bringing this shower? Is it just the clouds? Just steaming out of water from oceans? But the same cloud we see and expect it will bring rain, it just passes by. Why? Is it just a matter of climatic change and different vacuums created in space, as we are told by people, experts in climate sciences? Or there is a system behind it, there is a power behind it? Who has made the whole world of oceans, layers of water, layers of minerals, layer of things? The Quranic approach is that we need to develop an approach of questioning, and that is also an approach of philosophy, by the way. Philosophy, it educates people to raise proper questions. The Quran wants us to raise questions in front of our children and even with the adults, that who is behind it. And ultimately, you will find that your own children will say that definitely there has to be someone who has created it. That much can be worked out by human reason. And that is the boundaries of human reason. Human reason can lead us to the need of a creator. But then comes the problem of certainty and fact. Certainty and fact can only be acquired through revelation. And that's what children have to be taught systematically, rationally, scientifically, that we can come up to a point where there is a need for a creator for all these things. But what is that creator? What are his qualities? How he works? That needs to be known from him. And we find it's not only the Quran, but all earlier scriptures, even the mythologies of Hindus, when we analyze those, or even the so-called unwritten Bibles or unwritten scriptures of African tribes. I have come across several songs of African tribes which were never claiming to carry a prophet or a book, but the message is one and same, saying that there is only one ultimate God. Now, the revelation tells us, and that is a continuous chain. We find the 6,000 years old understanding of the Jewish people, of Hindus, of everyone who claim to have any touch with reality. They all of them come and say, and how come all of them for thousands of years with scriptures in their hands can have something which is not realistic? Therefore, the Quranic approach is very simple. First and foremost, raise questions, reach to point where reason has its threshold, ultimate limit, and beyond that, it is the Quran that tells us about who is our creator and how he benefits us, how he blesses us in our everyday life.
Next question from Nuruddin. What's the difference or similarities between the concept of Tawhid in Faruqi thought with the concept of worldview of Islam in Al-Atta's thought?
Well, it's only a matter of semantics. Secondly, it's a matter of the approach that Faruqi developed gradually. Faruqi developed an approach which is more nearer to Ibn Abdul Wahhab and Abu Ala Maududi. Al-Attas developed an approach which is more near to the mystical understanding of Islam. Otherwise, the content is one and same, no different. It's semantics, nothing more than that. And unfortunately, I have known both for quite some time. Both are scholars, both are sincere, both have contributed, but unfortunately, some intellectuals think they are the originators, while I don't believe even Faruqi is originator of any idea or Al-Attas originator. There are many others I mentioned since 19th century on Tawhid. Scholars are writing. I mentioned about Kitab al-Tawhid of Sheikh Abdu, as well as of Maududi and Iqbal and many others who precede both Al-Attas and Faruqi, and therefore these claims are immaterial. I don't think a humble professor can ever claim that he is the inventor of an idea. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone is inventor. We are his servants. It's his blessing that he has allowed us to serve knowledge, to serve his objective of ibadah, and we must thank him for that, and we should not feel proud of our own inventions and ideas.
Next question is from Rahmat, a PhD student of IIUM. My research is entitled Al-Faruqi's Contribution to the Quranic Studies. Is there any Faruqi work on Quranic studies? What is your advice about this research?
To the best of my knowledge, he did not work on the Quran as such, but in his writings, he has referred to Quran as the ultimate truth, as the source of all Islamic thought, and as divine revelation, and not as something which is the result of any interventions, human interventions. And in that sense, his belief and his understanding is highly authentic as well as conventional. Definitely in some areas like in ijtihad and other areas, where scholars have taken different routes. He takes a different approach, but I'm not aware of any specific work by him on the Quran, and perhaps I'm one of the longest surviving persons who lived with him for a longer period than many others. I'm not aware of any separate writing on the Quran by him.
We still have many questions, but unfortunately, we have run out of time. And Jazakumullah khair, everybody, for actively participating in this lecture. Now, I would request Dr. Anis to say the concluding remarks for this today's session.
Jazakallah khairan. My concluding note is very simple. I would like the young scholars as well as the elders to approach the Quran with an open mind and to understand that the basic purpose of the Quran is summarized in Surah Al-Fatiha, where it tells us that someone who deserves praise is none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone who listens and responds, no one but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, Al-Fatiha summarizes the Quranic approach of Tawhid. And Al-Fatiha is recited 9 times by us. What we need is that we recite Al-Fatiha in our prayer with a proper understanding of every single word, not just ayah, not just 7 ayat, but every single word. When we do that, then we are bound to be Islamized spiritually, culturally, economically, politically, socially, and our whole being will become an abd. The Quran wants us to become abd and not just a person who is doing ibadah. And Tawhid is the key for that. Tawhid tells us that ibadah as well as ubudiyah, two separate things, are only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibadah means all those rituals we use, and ubudiyah means that my thinking, my vision, my audition, my creativity, my research, everything has to be directed by Tawheed. If that is done, then we succeed in this world and life hereafter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may accept our ibadah and our sincerity and make us successful in this life and the world hereafter. Wa alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.
Brother Shahran, over to you.
Thank you. Amin, amin, ya rabbal alamin. Thank you so much, Prof. Anis, for giving very enlightening input. Inshallah, we hope you can come again to our session in other occasions, inshallah. Thank Dr. Sajjad for moderating us very well. And thank you all the brothers and sisters. We'll see you again tomorrow at 2:30 Kuala Lumpur time with Professor Jamal Badi, and 5 o'clock with Prof. Fatmir, another 9 o'clock session. Till then, good night. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.